This week in the business of tech, security was CISA linking ransomware to insurance companies and releasing the National Cybersecurity Strategy. AI, where we review copyright protection, the FTC, product updates, and prompt engineering. We also look at the retail IT channel and the overall economy, plus moves from Addigy, GoTo, and Nerdio to update you on. All these stories and more. Hit the like, subscribe, and the notification button, and help us pay the bills. And here are this week's stories. Executive Director Brandon Wales of CISA spoke last week at the Right of Boom event and cited insurance companies as contributors to the rise of the ransomware industry. Quote, insurance companies didn't price the market correctly, and they suffered for it with the rise of ransomware, Wales said. I would argue the insurance market fueled that same rise in ransomware because they made payment of ransoms far easier to happen. And they put a lot of companies under retainer to negotiate with criminal organizations. Now I think they are repricing the market. Premiums have gone up across the board, not just for MSPs. He said that the U.S. Department of Treasury is working on a federal backstop for catastrophic losses in the cyber insurance market, adding that the upcoming release of the National Cyber Strategy will provide more details. Ransomware is down per reports in the Wall Street Journal. Mandiant Security Group saw a 15% decrease in ransomware intrusions in 2022 from 2021, and CrowdStrike saw a drop in average ransom demand amounts from $5.7 million in 2021 to $4.1 million in 2022. Costs are up, too. The price of combating cyber threats has soared the past 5 years, as median IT security budgets more than tripled to $5.3 million in 2022, compared with $1.4 million in 2018, according to a report by Hiscox. And before we get too excited, Axios notes how Russia's criminal underground is regrouping. With the war in Ukraine now a year old, the sentiment is that Russian President Putin has little incentive to slow the groups and more to spur them on. Their current focus remains on Ukraine, as a recent Google report highlights. Some data about open source too. Most code bases at 84% contain at least one known open source vulnerability, a 4% increase from last year. This is from the 2023 Open Source Security and Risk Analysis Report produced by the Synopsys Cyber Research Center. There's a connection between AI and security to cover as well. There's a positive perspective, as some cyber leaders note the ability of tools like ChatGPT to be used for code reviews and finding security vulnerabilities. Others question that premise, including a Cornell study that shows that AI assistants lead to less secure code. That hasn't stopped hackers, who are also being spotted using the tools for malware writing. Over half of IT professionals predict that ChatGPT will be used in a successful cyber attack within the year. More than 7 in 10 IT professionals think ChatGPT is a potential cybersecurity threat and are concerned, according to the survey. Why do we care? Changes in insurance to come, and the government is a player in the space as well. Ultimately, financial motivation is going to drive behaviors. Criminals flock to the money spigot. If that dries up, they will change their approach. Addigy has released its 2023 State of the Apple Device Management Industry report for MSPs. Surveying 480 MSPs across North America and Europe, the boldest data point is that on average, Addigy customers see 30% growth year over year, and those who begin managing 100 or fewer Apple devices with Addigy grow 544% within 14.62 months. Additional highlights. The report notes that, on average, MSPs who manage Apple devices charge more than twice the monthly amount of MSPs who do not. 65% of respondents expect the use of Apple devices among customers to increase in the next 12 months, and also cites the 40% growth in Apple sales in a year, with a 13.5% market share in Q3 2022. And only 23.3% of those surveyed are leveraging Apple Business Manager. Why do we care? I'm biased as a Mac user, although I've been observing for years that ignoring 10 to 50% of the market is unwise. That's true for providers on both sides, tools providers and service providers. In blocking and tackling product news, GoTo is launching a suite of new remote monitoring and management features and an all-new free offering for GoTo Resolve. The latest updates include powerful new RMM capabilities to meet the needs of today's IT leaders, the company said. This further GoTo Resolve's evolution toward a modern, unified IT service management solution. The company said that GoTo has more than tripled its total managed devices and grown its weekly active users by more than 200% in the last 6 months. The free RMM solution includes customizable device monitoring, an intuitive systems diagnostics dashboard, a background terminal, and file manager access. It also has unlimited remote access and automation for up to 5 priority devices. Why do we care? GoTo is a billion-dollar company and worth highlighting in the space. Not an endorsement, simply an observation of the market. That's why we care. They're giving it away, potentially devaluing the product space. Are you fighting the constant problem of reconciling the billing of all the products and services that you sell? Imagine reconciling your billing with just a few clicks every month. No tab chaos, no revenue left on the table. Just getting paid for everything you do, and without spending days to figure it out. And what if it was two-way and infinite connections with a single integration for MSPs and vendors? It can be done with Gradient Synthesize. Try it for free at meetgradient.com. Generative AI is starting to get legal and regulatory attention. Reuters has reported that the U.S. Copyright Office has determined that images in a graphic novel that were created using the AI system Midjourney should not have been granted copyright protection. The U.S. Copyright Office will not allow copyright registrations for generated content going forward. Without new laws specific to the space, the expectation is that it will be determined by existing laws. There's also a blog analysis by University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill scholar Matt Peralt. ChatGPT won't be protected by Section 230 of social media. A prediction, of course, rather than law or rule. The FTC has weighed in too, with a blog post of note. Quote, marketers should know that, for FTC enforcement purposes, false or unsubstantiated claims about a product's efficacy are our bread and butter, the agency said in a post. And quoting the Washington Post, the agency laid out 4 potential abuses they plan to track: making exaggerated claims about what a product may do, making unsubstantiated promises about how AI makes a product better and perhaps costlier, failing to foresee and mitigate risks posed by the tool, and making baseless claims about the degree to which a company is actually using AI. Wall Street banks pushing back too. Quoting Bloomberg, Bank of America, Citicorp, Deutsche Bank, and Wells Fargo are among lenders that have recently banned usage of ChatGPT, with Bank of America telling employees that ChatGPT and OpenAI are prohibited from business use, according to people with knowledge of the matter. Walmart has warned employees not to put confidential information into ChatGPT, with a new memo out from them. With all the buzz around ChatGPT, Bing and Bard don't sleep on Amazon. Politico notes that Amazon Science has released a large language model on GitHub that outperformed GPT 3.5 by 16% on a standard test of science questions and answers. Let's not forget Meta, too, who announced their Lambda model. And The Information, reporting that Elon Musk is exploring forming a new lab to work on an alternative to ChatGPT. Zoom 2 with its Zoom IQ virtual agent, translation, captioning, and meeting summary tools, all discussed in their earnings calls this week. And important to those in the IT services space, Microsoft is adding the AI-powered version of Bing right into Windows 11, with full availability expected in the March 2023 monthly security update release. Also changing, Bing Chat now has the ability to choose a response style, such as precise, balanced, or creative. I mentioned the up-and-coming prompt engineer role last week. I spotted pieces in both Axios and the Washington Post that agreed with me that they're coming. There's also an emerging space of companies helping, including prompt search engines or marketplaces for prompts. And while it's common for those in tech to be excited about the technology, here's the broad data from the Washington Post about sentiment. A Monmouth University poll released last week found that only 9% of Americans believe that computers with artificial intelligence would do more good than harm to society. When asked the same question in a 1987 poll, a higher share of respondents, about 1 in 5, said AI would do more good than harm, Monmouth said. The Pew Research Center survey asked people different questions but found similar doubts about AI. Just 15% of respondents said they were more excited than concerned about the increasing use of AI in daily life. That skepticism is playing out, too, from Vice. New York State's comptroller released a report last week calling out NYC agencies for their lack of ethical and legal guardrails when it comes to using machine learning programs, which include algorithmic modeling, facial recognition, and other software used to monitor members of the public. The report states, quote, NYC does not have an effective AI governance framework. While agencies are required to report certain types of AI used annually, there are no rules or guidance on the actual use of AI. I do want to cite a positive use case today too, sales, specifically car shopping. Axios reports on how Fiat and Kia are both exploring virtual showrooms, with common questions handled in pre-recorded video answers and complex questions referred to humans who can leverage ChatGPT to find the right answer. Why do we care? Putting the stories together helps provide the insight into the services opportunity, like managing the regulation, legal and intellectual property risk, and the actual use of the tools. How will the use of AI tools impact the intellectual property created? How do you mitigate the risks? How do you even use it responsibly and effectively? The FTC guidance is real and already here. And now, copyright guidance says there aren't protected works. And this isn't a slam dunk on consumer confidence either. We're moving through the hype cycle pretty fast, but my belief is it will also be pretty inconsistent too. Highs and lows, all intermixed. This is the space to consider as a services firm, and it's moving pretty fast already. You can move at whatever speed you want. Standing still is the speed that will cause you to be washed away. I mentioned the update expected for the National Cyber Strategy earlier in the week. It was released today. It's a 40-page document providing a roadmap for new laws and regulations to fight cyber threats. It's intended as a 10-year plan, not an instant change. The strategy declares ransomware a, quote, threat to national security, public safety, and economic prosperity, and is intended to allow more intelligence community resources against the threat. The plan is built around 5 basic pillars: minimum cybersecurity requirements for critical infrastructure, offensive cyber actions against hackers and nation states, shifting liability onto software manufacturers, diversifying and expanding the cyber workforce, and continuing to build international partnerships. Of note for MSPs, mentioned by name in the document, quote, the federal government will also deepen operational and strategic collaboration with software, hardware, and managed services providers with the capability to reshape the cyber landscape in favor of greater security and resilience. This is part of the second pillar. Let's also highlight the intention to shift liability for software vulnerabilities onto manufacturers. This has been previewed earlier in the week in a speech by CISA Director Jen Easterly. The question is how officials would determine who was responsible for product vulnerabilities with thousands of components. White House officials made clear that they did not want to punish underfunded open source developers, instead shifting the responsibility onto final goods assemblers who profit from the software. Why do we care? You should read it. It's distinctly relevant to the industry, and this is how legislation starts, with proposals by experts. If you call yourself a managed services provider, the framework outlined here includes you in the responsibility for addressing the cyber threats, which leads to defining where the responsibility is. I'm in favor of the responsibility is at least shared by those who manufacture products. In the physical world, if a product is created that is unsafe, the manufacturer has responsibilities for its repair. This easily shifts to the virtual world as well, and thus it makes sense. The customer can't be wholly responsible, nor is the service provider squeezed in the middle between customers and software vendors. The 2023 RSPA Retail IT Channel KPI study is out. Here are your highlights. From the report, quote, "This marks the 6th year out of 7 we have recorded a decrease in the percent of reseller-only businesses, 65% in the 2022 study, 59% in 2023, and an increase in the percent of ISV and VAR hybrids, 17.0% 2022, 18.1% 2023. The makeup of the companies comprising the retail IT solution provider community has changed over the past decade, and these numbers support our thesis of a permanent shift to many VARs feeling that to grow, they need to own intellectual property through software." And, quote, "The number of solution providers 100% completely transitioned to as a service hit a record high 28.6% in 2022, and survey respondents expect that figure to increase to 35.1% in 2023. A data point I noted on marketing is that the largest percentage at 41.3% spend between 1 and 4% of revenue on marketing. Why do we care? I'll start with that data point. Web Strategies reports that average marketing spending in 2018 was 7.9% of revenues, with B2B product companies spending 6.3% and B2B services companies spending 6.9%. So this industry segment spends half that, then wonders why it's not very good at marketing. I can tell you why. It's not being invested in. Let's assume that 35% conversion to as a service for 2023 happens. That's still just a third. Not exactly blowing the doors off. It's either an opportunity for those doing as a service to accelerate, or for disruptors to chart other courses. Or maybe both. Let's update you on the pressures of the US economy. While it was looking like it might all just work out, landing with that dream scenario of inflation falling with a strong job market, seems prices are staying high. New data out Friday morning showed consumer spending and inflation heated up in January, and the core personal consumption expenditures price index, which excludes food and energy costs, rose 0.6% last month, the fastest since last June. Also out is a paper by economists who suggest that a mild recession will be necessary for inflation to come down to the Fed's 2% target. I also wanted to note some wage data changes. Silicon Valley and the Bay Area suffered sharp drops in average wages as the tech sector shed jobs. A recent DICE salary report shows that tech worker salaries increased by 2.3% last year. While that increase kept average salaries well above six figures, it slowed down from 2021's 6.9% growth rate. Why do we care? Well, updating on the state of play. It's looking much more positive than it did 6 months ago. Let's talk about some action on Capitol Hill related to stories this week. On AI, the New York Times looks at what potential action lawmakers are considering. And while there is a lot of buzz, it seems like there is little action. Loosely quoting the piece. Before regulation, there needs to be agreement on what the dangers are, and that requires a deep understanding of what AI is. You'd be surprised how much time I spend explaining to my colleagues that the chief dangers of AI will not come from evil robots with red lasers coming out of their eyes, said Representative Jay Obernolt, a California Republican and the only member of Congress with a master's degree in artificial intelligence. And there is mixed response to yesterday's release of the National Cybersecurity Strategy, with some portions praised and others criticized. The question is how much regulation is required, and there's a clear partisan divide here, particularly with Congress split. Why do we care? Congress's lack of action would mean the EU is the de facto regulator for AI technology, considering the large multinational scale of the companies at the core of the technology. The Europeans have proven far less willing to open up and allow everything. I'd hate to see that inaction also impact cybersecurity. There's a call your congressperson moment here if you agree with me. And, potentially, if you don't, too. Nerdio held their NerdioCon this week, and there's an announcement to be aware of. The company announced several products. Nerdio Manager for Enterprise, a unified management platform for desktop as a service and physical endpoints. Nerdio Manager for MSP, a multi-tenant workflow-powered cloud management platform. The company said it, quote, helps MSPs accelerate Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, and Microsoft Intune deployments, simplify management across customers, and increase margins. Unified Endpoint Management provides MSPs single pane of glass management for all Windows devices and applications leveraging Microsoft Intune. MSPs will be able to use Nerdio Manager for all device management, including Android and iOS. They can also use it to apply automated approval workflows, RBAC roles, cross-tenant management, and powerful troubleshooting tools. There's also Nerdio Unified Application Management for applications, and Nerdio Advisor, a suite of tools that focused on cost management. Quoting CRN's interview, quote, those needs have to do with the adoption of Microsoft Intune primarily, Nerdio's CEO said. Microsoft Intune is being pushed or targeted toward MSPs, and it's seen as fairly complex and overwhelming for MSPs. We are trying to repeat what we've done with Azure several years ago, where we helped MSPs demystify and make it more cost-effective and easier to use in their practice. I think Intune is ready for that as well, end quote. Why do we care? Nerdio built an RMM. Their approach to augmenting Intune is very forward-leaning, while also reaching backward to traditional endpoint management. If I ponder my MSP of the future, it would use a technology born of the cloud rather than pushed into it. The company has proven popular with a number of MSPs and IT services companies, and so I think the landscape has changed. There's traditional RMM, the upstart RMM players, and these cloud players moving in to RMM. I'll send you into the weekend with a Wall Street Journal article which anyone who has ever consulted in IT will sympathize with. Quote, no one wants a printer, but everyone wants to print. It's consumer-focused, telling stories of individuals who have never had printers and how they address the need or end up buying one. Why do we care? If you ever need assurance that the role of IT provider isn't going away, take comfort in knowing that printers will always perplex. Thanks for watching this week in the Business of Tech. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this show, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary podcast, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers, with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue subscribe button. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all of them, and I look forward to talking to you next time.